Imagine stepping into an ancient temple for the very first time. You've traveled for days across the desert or through the mountains, following the sound of drums and the smell of burning incense that seems to hang in the air. As you approach the towering gates, you feel something shift inside you. The walls rise higher than anything you've ever seen. Shadows stretch across carved stone figures of gods, staring down at you, eyes that seem alive. Your heartbeat slows, not out of calm, but out of fear. You feel smaller, weaker, and in that moment, it's as if the building itself is looking at you. That wasn't an accident. Ancient temples weren't just places of worship. They were psychological machines, carefully engineered environments designed to shape your thoughts, emotions, and behavior. Every column, every shadow, every echo was intentional. These structures were built not to free your mind, but to capture it, to break your will and make you surrender. The truth is, ancient leaders understood human psychology better than we give them credit for. They may not have had MRI scans or modern psychology textbooks, but they knew one powerful truth. If you want to control people, you don't just tell them what to believe. You make them feel it. You create a world so overwhelming, so consuming, that resistance feels impossible. Take Egypt, for example. Walk into Karnak or Luxor, and the first thing you notice is the scale. Massive walls, ceilings stretching toward the heavens, columns so wide you could line 10 people around them and still not touch fingertips. Psychologists today know that physical scale affects perception. When something towers over us, we instinctively feel smaller, less significant. The Egyptians knew this long before psychology had a name. They built on such a grand scale, not because they needed to, but because it made human beings feel powerless. And then comes the sound. Ancient temples weren't just stone. They were designed as acoustic traps. A single whisper from a priest could echo like the voice of a god. Imagine standing in a pitch-dark hall, hundreds of feet long, and suddenly hearing a low voice roll through the air, amplified by the walls. To the uneducated mind of the ancient world, that wasn't clever design. It was the divine speaking. It was proof that the gods were real, and that the priests held the key to communicating with them. Light and shadow were another weapon. The deeper you walked into a temple, the darker it became. Your journey started in the light, but the further you went, the more shadows swallowed you. At the very center, the so-called Holy of Holies, only priests could enter, carrying torches or small fires. Mystery was built into the architecture itself. People waiting outside saw only flickering light, heard only distant chants, and believed with absolute certainty that something otherworldly was happening in that darkness. But temples didn't just overwhelm the senses, they choreographed your experience. Pathways forced crowds to move in a single direction, toward a central altar. Statues and carvings reminded you of your place in the cosmic order. And rituals turned the architecture into theater. Imagine the smell of blood from a sacrifice, the roar of drums, the sudden silence before a priest's voice filled the chamber. You weren't just inside a building, you were inside a script. A script written by kings and priests to erase individuality and replace it with obedience. And Egypt wasn't alone. Across the ocean, the Aztecs built temples that rose like staircases into the sky. Their pyramids were not meant to welcome, they were meant to intimidate. Climbing hundreds of steps under the blazing sun, surrounded by thousands of chanting voices. By the time you reached the top, your body was trembling, your will exhausted. If you were a victim chosen for sacrifice, the architecture itself had already broken you before the priest's blade ever touched your skin. The spectacle wasn't just for the gods, it was for the crowd. Watching blood spill from such a height, with the body tumbling down those steep stone steps, created unforgettable images burned into the minds of everyone watching. That wasn't just ritual, it was psychological warfare. And in Jerusalem, the Temple of Solomon was built on the same principle. It wasn't just a house for God, it was a fortress for belief. The common people were allowed only in the outer courts, kept at a distance from the sacred center. Step by step, layer by layer, access narrowed until only the high priest could enter the innermost chamber. This wasn't random. It taught people hierarchy. It embedded in their minds the idea that holiness was restricted, exclusive, and that they needed mediators, the priests, the leaders, to approach power for them. And once you accept that someone else must access the divine on your behalf, you've already surrendered your will. Rome mastered this art on a scale the world had never seen. The Colosseum wasn't a temple in the traditional sense, but it was a psychological weapon just the same. Its design created awe before the spectacle even began. 50,000 people filing into towering arches, sitting in perfect tiers, all facing the same stage. Once inside, you weren't just a spectator, you were part of a crowd, part of a collective will. The blood spilled in the arena wasn't just entertainment, it was a lesson. It reminded everyone of Rome's power, Rome's cruelty, and Rome's absolute dominance. The architecture itself shouted, "Resistance is futile." The most disturbing part is that these ancient tricks never disappeared. They evolved. Today, when you walk into Washington, D.C., what do you see? Columns, domes, marble structures designed to make you feel small, to remind you that power belongs to the system, not the individual. Why do churches and cathedrals reach toward the sky with soaring ceilings? Why do they echo when someone speaks? It's the same formula. Scale, sound, and light create awe. Awe creates obedience, and obedience creates power. Even sports stadiums carry the DNA of the Colosseum. The crowd becomes one body, one voice roaring together. The field is the stage. The design amplifies unity, and unity erases individuality. For a few hours, you're not you, you're part of something bigger. And that feeling is addictive. Politicians, corporations, and religious leaders know it. That's why they keep building these modern temples, disguised as arenas, skyscrapers, or sacred halls. The chilling truth is this: temples were never about gods. They were about control. They were physical environments designed to hack the human mind, to overwhelm the senses, and to make surrender feel natural. And in many ways, they still exist today. We've just given them new names. So the next time you walk into a massive building, whether it's a stadium, a cathedral, or a government hall, ask yourself, is this really just architecture? Or is it a message carved in stone, whispering the same command the ancients perfected thousands of years ago? Bow down. Obey. Surrender. Because once you see architecture as mind control, you'll never walk through those doors the same way again.